Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the APAC Dialogue Show hosted by APAC News Network.
Mhm.
Just briefly, APAC News Network, we are a media organization headquartered out of Noida, and we focus on government, healthcare, education, enterprise IT, and BFSI verticals.
Right.
So primarily, the best way to start the discussion would be if you can update us on the solutions and services in the InstaSafe portfolio, which you are offering for the Indian market, and then we'll take up specific areas from there.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. And my name is Sandip here. I'm the founder and CEO of InstaSafe. Before even I get into InstaSafe, these are extraordinary times. We had never ever seen the kind of changes that we are seeing in the world of digital transformation, cyber security. And today, before even I get started about talking about InstaSafe, I want to give you a little bit of context about the evolution of the internet and the invention of the internet, right? So the invention of the internet had one single purpose in mind, that of connecting users and devices to form a highly interconnected network of networks. Thus, we had an open system based on unfettered trust where any device or user could talk to anyone. And that's how the evolution began. This system of perimeter security was analogous to how they used to call it the castle and the moat, right? In the traditional, if you go to a fort in Jaipur, we would see the fort and water all around, and that's what we define a castle and moats, with the castle being the data center where the enterprise assets were protected with gates, walls, and moats, and with its entry points being guarded by various security technology. And that is where we had this whole concept of castle and moat approach to cybersecurity. This system of unfettered trust, however, was exploited by hackers on a large scale, who leveraged the absence of security checks to intercept and siphon off critical data. To keep a check on this, enterprises choose to implement firewalls, and that is where the whole firewall concept came up. You would have a firewall at every network point, and other security tools, bunch of them: intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system, proxies, and bunch of other things, to create a perimeter effectively dividing these assets into trusted, that is present inside the perimeter, and untrusted, that is present outside the perimeter. Now, this is the context of where we are operating in. Now, all this worked perfectly fine while we were coming to offices, we were working out of branch offices, and all of that. But since the last 18 months, with the beginning of the pandemic, what we saw is completely remote workers working, and nearly all the workers have become remote workers, right? So this gave a rise to the issue of remote secure access issues, and this issue of remote connectivity and access to third-party contractors, applications hosted on the cloud was not able to be solved by the traditional technologies like VPNs, virtual private networks. And not just VPNs, there were other technologies like VDIs and all, which were obviously available but not simple and easy to operate. So this was the fundamental challenge. While all of this was happening, there was technology innovations happening at quite rapid scale, but we had never seen the kind of change happening that we saw in the last close to 2 years. There was a concept of zero trust security that was bubbling up, and InstaSafe has been a pioneer out of India when we started this whole initiative of understanding this whole concept of perimeter. And we said, hey, the perimeter is dead. So what we are telling here is each of the entities, that is you and me, who are accessing corporate applications, that it starts all the way from business email to variety of other mission critical applications, they are today all going to the cloud, and we are all coming out and working wherever we are. So how do you ensure trust is established when applications are not in the control of data centers and they are hosted in public clouds and wherever, and remote workers are spread all across? So this concept of zero trust is what InstaSafe has been pioneering, and we are very proud to share that we have got global endorsements and accomplishments for our pioneering and innovative work done. Leading analysts like Gartner, Forrester, and multiple others have covered our innovative approach and we have been pioneers in this segment since the day the category was started by Gartner in end 2017. So that's the little bit of context about us. Now let's continue our discussion, and I can go more and more to explain how this affects us on a daily level.
Since you touched upon the when you were giving the context upon the pandemic, now my question is, what had happened during the pandemic is because of this work from home and work from anywhere system, a lot of heterogeneous devices and heterogeneous networks sort of came into the system. People were working from anywhere. So that sort of increases the vulnerability. And when you
Right.
are talking about the zero trust, so how do you ensure these enterprises or organizations to migrate and manage these heterogeneous network and at the same time ensure the zero trust thing for them? How did you help enterprises manage that?
Yeah. So before we come into even how do we help, let's understand how this traditional approach of security was being dealt with organizations all this while, right? So we see the network perimeters, that is users and devices, are roughly divided into two groups. Those inside the perimeter that were deemed to be trusted, having unrestricted access to resources within the network, and those on the outside were untrusted, right? So this system of assigning excessive trust by default was the inherent problem, because once the perimeter was breached, attackers could easily laterally move through the network, accessing and exploiting critical resources. We have seen that in the last 2 years, multiple such situations where breaches have happened because of excessive inherent trust already there in the system, right? Now, how do you deal with it? So there is no easy way out. While zero trust has become a very common jargon in the industry today, but more importantly, if you just try to understand the fact that zero trust is not just a product that you plug in and you suddenly become zero trusted ready, right? You already have those, traits existing in the infrastructure and the system today. It could start with basic two-factor authentication. If we could generate enough awareness to use all our Gmail accounts with a two-factor authentication, we are already adding a layer of trust. Imagine if you extend the same thing to all our enterprise application, we are already adding a layer of very good security without worrying about cost and all of that, right? Now if you come to zero trust, first you have to identify, most and importantly, is what are your applications and who are your users accessing those applications. That segmentation, segregation, and understanding who needs to access what is very, very critical. We have seen situations with customers where sensitive file servers are given IP address based range bounding for people to access. We have seen situations where firewall policies are very loosely coupled. Now obviously all this needs careful manual policy development, policy monitoring, and process maturity, which is not easy to continuously play it all the time, right? And that is where players like InstaSafe and others come in, where they could help establish a zero trust network. Now, how is a zero trust network different from a traditional technology? This obviously will have to go into little details of understanding how does networking protocols work and how does networking technologies work. To put it in a very simple way, in a very layman way to understand, imagine the traditional network to be very equivalent to an Indian railway station. If you go to any Indian railway station today also, all you need is two ways of accessing genuinely. Either you pick up a platform ticket and you then have access to any platform. Nobody stops you. Go to platform number one or platform number two. Or you pick up a railway ticket. Now, there also the issue is you pick up a railway ticket, you can pick up a first class ticket, a AC ticket, and second class ticket, and then it's up to you how you want to go. If you want to kind of pick up a ticket from X to Y and then go from X to Z, it's all up to you until the TT or the railway police catches you. So there is a degree of manual intervention required, right? Now, this is not easy to enforce all the time. If you compare the same analogy with a typical airport security, what you would see is that to get into the airport, you need to show your proof of identity and show the soft copy or the hard copy of the boarding pass. So essentially, you as the human is identified with the very help of a device which is a second factor like your boarding pass and your proof of identity. And once you get in there, you have multiple layers of checks in, and most importantly, after you've gone past through all the layers of check-in, you can only board the specified plane to the specified destination using the specified airline at the particular time. You can't change any of that, right? Now, this whole concept of railway station to airport security is what is the difference between a traditional VPN technology or traditional perimeter based access technology to a zero trust secure access technology.
Okay. So that's interesting. So my question related to this now, again, coming back to multiple users, and
Yeah, back.
uh, now there are multiple users accessing from newer devices, and their identity management has to be done in a different way than what was being done in those pre-pandemic days. Now, when identity management itself is a challenge, and then comes the question of authentication and access control to the specified users. So this whole scale, and then it has to be done dynamically so that the business remains productive. So, how, in terms of the way you have been conversing with the CISOs earlier, so how did these conversations change in these times under these circumstances?
See, to put it, in a very, very, very colloquial way, let's understand what are some real business problems, right? And then let us tie down to security problems and technology implementation problems, right? First and foremost, customers are seeking access of various types. It could be a location based access. That means that, hey, allow X person to only access from Mumbai location. If somebody is trying to force upon access from some other location, then you please issue a notification or an alert or a warning, or stop those people, right? On the other hand, then there are situations like, how do you grant access based on various types of devices? If you want only a person to be accessing device from a tablet or a phone or a laptop in a particular location, those are different types. And then this gets additionally controlled with time-based access and various other policies, which different business units have different types of requirements, right? We want to, we have seen situations where international businesses, they would want a particular application being accessed only in a particular time slot and a particular time based access, location based access, and various other factors, right? So implementing all this was already possible, but implementing in a manner which you could very quickly do, very quickly dynamically roll out, and do it at the speed of business was not easy. And that is the promise of modern vendors or cloud native vendors like InstaSafe, where we're not just about security technology. We also tell you that how easy it is to kind of go ahead and implement integrating various aspects of technology. Now, I need to tell you, when it comes to access, you need a lot of context. It's very simple to the way we enter an office building complex or an apartment building complex, right? You got to enter the gate, you got to enter the block, you got to enter the floor number, you got to enter the suite number or the apartment number, and all of that, right? So all of this needs a lot of context understanding, and that is where you need to integrate with various identity based management systems, where already these kind of details are available. So ability to quickly integrate with various identity systems, be it Active Directory or LDAP, and various other systems, is very critical. And not just that, but ability to act and enforce these in real time is also equivalently important. So that is also where we see customers needing today, at least in this way, where part of it is coming to office, part of it is permanently working from home. How do you monitor various types of activity logs? And most importantly, it is also important to carry forward logs for variety of compliance reasons. It could be for business reasons, it could be for HR reasons, it could be for control systems reasons, and bunch of things like that. And when an access technology provider like us or InstaSafe is working and providing those activity logs, it becomes part of the overall business scenario, where these data points of digital workers, wherever they are working and howsoever they're working, is tracked in as part of the business processes.
Okay. Uh, One question still remains on the management part, and this is again from the experience that you had accrued over the last 18 months, especially as you said. In terms of the way the access was controlled and this zero trust, in terms of impacting the productivity of the business organizations, how was it managed? That is more on the technology side, and business aspect of this question were there were in the pre-pandemic days certain SLAs that you had with the customers, the way they were drawn. Now suddenly in this change scenario, the way things were working, how did those impacted those existing SLAs?
See, first and foremost, the biggest challenge that we saw was the ability to stay active. I mean, if you remember last year, I still see, from March when things changed dramatically. For the first 3 months, it was very little about security. It was about how do I continue my business, right? In whatever form and fashion. So the first 3, 4, 5 months went about in just ensuring that, hey, are we even productive? Are we even available? And once that happened, we saw a spate of cybersecurity breaches happening around the globe. Then practitioners kind of got conscious and says, okay, now let's test the security controls and systems. Let's see the efficacy and the effectiveness of the controls that you've established in place. And then they started testing out various scenarios and how protected they are against various attack vectors and breach scenarios, right? And from there things started moving, where customers realized that, okay, this is going to be the new normal, right? So in that case, SLAs obviously got adjusted, you know, and SLAs in fact became more stringent, because only those players who could, only those technology providers who could effectively work with customers in rapid rollout both up and down, and ensuring that, practitioners who are actually doing the controls, or CIOs and CISOs who are playing at the operating at the management level, at the leadership level, where they need to be sure of the compliances that are in place are being managed, right? So one of the ways that we managed was obviously, with our granular reporting analytics and notifications and all of that. We also had very tight integrations with all possible SIEM players and other such tools, where not just we provide, but it also becomes a part of overall, reporting and compliance requirements of the organization, either rolling up to a SOC or a NOC, and that our data can be easily integrable and rolled up to the overall dashboard of the organizations, right? So that's where we saw tons of integration work happening, and we were actually able to kind of help customers exceed their SLA requirements or meet their SLA requirements effectively.
You touched upon the compliances part. Now, most of the industries and moment the security concerns are involved, that involves a lot of security and compliances with different regulations there. So, in the change scenario, how did you ensure that all these security regulations were also conformed to, and business was still productive?
See, the first part was we started as a cloud native vendor. That means that the technology that we started building all the way up since the last 8 years was cloud native. That means we were born in the cloud. That essentially means we leveraged public cloud infrastructure extensively, be it AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or IBM, to ensure that we were first compliant from day one. When you start from public cloud infrastructure, you do not have to worry about a lot of things inherently. You start with best in class to ensure that first and foremost you are protected with all the compliance needs. And then we start upon working out to see what kind of scenarios do customers have. There are a lot of customers who are very comfortable with cloud delivered solutions. Then there are sensitive organizations which need an on premises or a hybrid kind of setup, because part of their infrastructure could be residing in the cloud, which is the modernization of their infrastructure, and still parts of their infrastructure could be in the legacy environments, for which they need partial on premises deployments. And our technology works in the concept of where our controllers are residing in the cloud, and our gateways are flexible enough to be deployed wherever the applications of our customers reside, right? And at an endpoint level, what we saw interestingly was customers for their compliance needs were needing variety of types of access. Now, let me explain this a little bit more in detail. When we are talking of an end user, it could be an employee or a non-employee. And then it all depends on what kind of controls are required. Not necessarily everybody needs very heavy control mechanisms for a variety of reasons, including privacy. There could be cases where people need an agent based deployment, where a small piece of software is actually installed in their network, on their endpoint, and legacy applications needs to be accessed, or RDPs and SSHs and bunch of things like that. But these are for the heavy power users, we would call it. And then comes the larger set of users who would not be comfortable doing any kinds of deployment on their endpoints, be it a mobile or a laptop or tablet, right? For them, a clientless kind of a deployment is very helpful because they can do very quick accessing the technologies and very quickly get productive. And then the kind of controls that you would also need to establish needs to be flexible and dynamic, right? So for us, compliance is, security of our own infrastructure. How do we kind of comply, or how do we enable our customers to comply to the larger compliance requirements? I know today, nowadays, nearly everybody needs to be compliant to some compliance or the other, right? Let's take the case of payments. If you're actually taking in payments, because payments infrastructure has become so easy, then naturally you are being somewhere or the other made to be compliant to the PCI DSS infrastructure or something like that, right? And then if you're part of, a global business, then naturally GDPR, HIPAA, and bunch of other compliances would anyway come any which way you need to be comply, right? So these are things that we enable for our customers to stay very quickly productive and efficient.
Another question, as you mentioned, that InstaSafe, you are a cloud native vendor. What from organizations we have seen in the last 1.5 years is sort of this has accelerated the migration towards cloud for many organizations. And
Yes.
typically, the scenario what we are seeing in an enterprises today, they are having a multi-cloud environment kind of. There will
Yes.
be certain applications on the public cloud, the Azures and AWSs. You will see maybe Google Cloud also. Then there will be certain applications on private clouds. There will be hybrid environment. There might be private clouds from multiple cloud service providers. There might be certain applications on the edge also. So this typical multi-cloud scenario, and then they will have some underlying fabric like a Nutanix or something, which will manage that multi-cloud environment. So in
Right.
the multi-cloud management scenario, what are the security challenges, and how are you sort of helping organizations manage those challenges?
Oh, this is very interesting question. So let's look at it this way, right? Imagine, you are traveling to multiple countries, and if you go to different countries, each country has its own electrical socket point. If you're in India, if you're trying to plug your laptop charger or your mobile phone charger, there is a particular method of socket. If you're in the Europe, there is a different way of socket. If you're in the US, it's a different type of a socket, right? Now imagine each of these hybrid scenarios very similar to what I just said, electrical sockets in different countries, right? Now each country has its own method. So similarly, each public cloud, private cloud has their own method. Somebody is providing inbuilt, somebody is providing additional technologies, somebody is providing partner technologies, and all of that. Now imagine, what if you had a multi-point charger with you, or an adapter with you, right? Essentially, that's what is the most important tool that we carry when we all travel overseas. And InstaSafe is a tool like that. It essentially will help you take your network, yeah, that means your application, your devices, and wherever you're hosting, it will provide you with a secure layer of connectivity or access. And that is the power we bring on the table. If anybody understands the value of a multi-point adapter in international travel, then you suddenly realize how valuable and independent access technology provider becomes, who has zero trust offerings as well.
That's a very interesting analogy.
Yeah,
Now,
because what happens is, once you are having an independent layer, you don't have to worry about different types of clouds. Then you're very comfortable, because you know that, because see, the transit point is where the craziness lies. Clouds inherently are very secure, be it private or public. They've invested heavily into taking care of their infrastructure. And data centers also by design are good. What about the exchange, the shared responsibility? That is where the fault lines lie. If the fault lines are taken care by an independent provider, that's where the beauty comes in.
okay. So now coming more to the business aspect of it is specifically what sort of go to market strategy you follow, and which are the verticals where you are witnessing more traction, and what sort of use cases these verticals have?
See, one of the most important, verticals that we see are all those people who enable business. Right now, who does enable business? Financial services, technology companies. Nowadays, very modern startups or high growth startups, and we are also now seeing governments in a big way adopting this sustained new normal, heterogeneous working environments. Right now, let's get into specific use cases. If you go to financial services, they have traditionally been very heavy-handed and kind of accepted VDI is a very normal way of doing things. While VDI might be best useful in a particular use cases, when you want to do quick rollout, faster efficiency, elasticity and flexibility, they come with their own set of challenges. And not just that, understanding technology to operate in real time is also easier said than done, right? While you can just buy technology as a one-time investment, or the operating and maintaining this technology is never easy. So you would ideally want a technology provider which is lightweight. And how do I put it? Imagine security is a very very context sensitive matter. If you are having a very a lot of assets which need to be heavily guarded, you please go ahead and do heavy duty security. But if you are just having a small room with hardly a bed and a cot and your own living room, you really do not need that level of security. So the biggest challenge is, how do you balance productivity and security at the right price points or cost points of investments of the technology, right? And that's where we see CIOs or leading practitioners, they take a multi-point approach where parts of their infrastructure needs to be controlled heavily, parts of their infrastructure needs to be controlled effectively as much compliance and productivity trade-off is happening at the same time, right? So this is where the intersection of where we operate.
Okay. Okay, and specifically, what about your GTM strategy, uh, channel network, and what go-to-market roadmap you follow?
See, initially, when we started, we were a direct company. Obviously, it makes sense because once you start acquiring customers, showing them the proof of value, showing them the proof of concept, it makes sense. About 3 years back, or about 3.5 years back, we started this concept of reaching out indirectly, right? Today, we have OEM partners, distribution partners, reseller partners, system integration partners, and cloud partners, where we very effectively work with them and try to address customer needs very closely. The whole idea of a go-to-market strategy is to see, once you have built a technology which is proven and robust and repeatable, how can you make it reach out to a wider set of audiences, right? So once the technology is available, the next big thing that defines is how quickly can you distribute it, right? So there we are leveraging partners effectively in India. We have partners. We have partners now in the US. We have partners in UK, and we're rapidly expanding with partners all across APAC. Since this is an APAC-oriented show, I would request all, cloud forward partners and security conscious partners who are listening to the show would be very happy. We are very open and happy to partner with you and see how we can collaborate with you to see that customer successes are upcoming and promising for all your customer needs from a cybersecurity zero trust access perspective.
Thank you. And one more thing I just wanted to understand is, again, this is more contextual in the last 18 months, as you said. What has been the balance between, have you looked at sort of deepening the engagement with the existing customers, maybe by upselling and cross selling, or looking at acquiring new customers? So, how has
So
been the balance
that's
between?
a very good question. In fact, I would say each one of our customers has grown multiple folds, right? And always they say, if you can't keep your existing customers happy, how would you keep your future customers happy, right? So we are very grateful to our customers, to our clients, to those practitioners, CIOs and CISOs and IT network practitioners who have been believing in us, who have taught us a lot of things along the way. Simple things like how do we kind of expand use cases to suit very specific verticals. Some of the most interesting things that we have been able to listen to our customers and deliver is, there aren't too many players who can ensure that you have their own authenticator app and their own multi-factor authentication and their own device checks as well as a zero trust, secure infrastructure, all inbuilt into a one, with having both secure containers as well as client and clientless based access controls in place. So we are thankful to our customers who have believed in us, who have shared us their expectations, where we have been able to incorporate that in our roadmap. And today we would say, I think, a large part of our business is coming from existing customers who have constantly and deepened their engagement and expanded their use cases. Because let's look at this whole access use case. One is a legacy use case where we are replacing existing infrastructures or existing VPN technologies and things like that. And one is a modernization of infrastructure where they're leveraging clouds and modernizing their application side of the infrastructure, right? So we are again thankful to each of one of our customers. But having said that, we are very rapidly growing in the international markets, where we are meeting customers who have quicker needs to kind of see how time to value can be expedited, how flexibility and elasticity can be realized. But having said that, yes, today we should be growing at more than about 200% year on year. And then that largely comes because our existing customers have deepened their expands and they've referred us to newer customers, and that's how we have grown.
Okay. And if we look at the next 2 to 3 quarters, what are going to be your key focus areas? That can be in terms of new features in products, new products, or other expansion. What are going to be the key focus areas?
No, so from our ability to execute perspective, from a business growth perspective, we are constantly adding newer channel partners. We are adding training programs. We are setting up enablement exercises where larger audiences. So let's understand this whole market of access VPNs and all of this is a fairly large market and a very very legacy market. Last 30 years, people have been doing something or the other ever since the client server network and the internet got established, right? Now, while all of this is not possible to be overnight changed, customers are realizing the value of adopting to a zero trust architecture, a zero trust strategy, and customers are adopting each one in their own ways, right? So that's from a go-to-market strategy. We're aggressively expanding, we're aggressively hiring. If any of potential new joinees are listening to this, we would love to kind of extend them and tell them that, hey, from a culture perspective, InstaSafe is one of those unconventional companies where you get an opportunity to directly play hands-on and create some of the most path-breaking use cases in the industry, work on category creating products and use cases. From a technology investment perspective, this market is seeing a complete change of things, right? What was using working before, using variety of complicated technologies, completely seeing an overall newer jargons are coming into place. Very different realizations of identity access management landscape is changing. Modern tools are coming up, and InstaSafe is playing a pioneering role there of how do customers kind of see that the whole point is. So you know what? Let me put it in another analogy, right? The hub and the spoke model. All this while, we had seen the hub and the spoke, where the users were the spokes. Imagine you had a bicycle, you're taking the rim, and then you see the spokes were the remote workers or the official workers who were wherever working, and the hub was the data center and things like that. Now this whole infrastructure is getting turned upside down. Now the hub has become the spoke has become the hub, right? So at the basis is the human identity who is accessing their business critical applications and business applications from wherever they are and whatever devices they're accessing. And then these applications are all now spread out in different parts. We just spoke about the hybrid situation, right? So now the entire infrastructure or the enterprise cybersecurity infrastructure is going through a change. So a lot of newer ways of doing things are changing, and we will see very different kinds of newer categories, newer technologies coming up. So InstaSafe is rapidly investing, and we should be able to announce very interesting features and upcoming capabilities that our customers would see and get delighted.
Okay, and lastly, I'd like to ask, since you mentioned this, what about InstaSafe's infrastructure and manpower resources in terms of your R&D, your sales and marketing, and your infrastructure? How is it?
So we were largely Bangalore-based company. But having said that, in now close to 2 years, we have been working fully remote, and we operate with two entities, one in India and one in the US. Today, we have people working out of people, partners, and contractors working out of the US and the UK, and obviously in India, we're distributed, working completely remote. And one very important thing I must tell you is that we have been Deloitte's Fast 50 in the last 3 years, and have been the fastest 50 growing companies in Asia Pacific. And having said that, building the remote culture has been very important for us. So while our staff is today distributed and we are hiring full remote staff, and we would have satellite offices where people can go ahead and have their focused time and attention. But having said that, the bulk of the team is residing in India, spread all parts, and then expanding globally. And our infrastructure from day one has been cloud native. So we are a completely born in the cloud, living in the cloud company.
Okay, thanks a lot. Greatly appreciate you taking your time for this interactive discussion. Really
Hey,
appreciate. Thank you.
thank you so much. It was very nice interacting with you. Bye bye.
Sure.